Today we'll talk about one of the most pressing transnational issues or global issues, which is environmental issues. And yeah, we'll not only talk about the issues, but how the issues relate to the politics, economics, and also social. So the environmental issues is indeed an example of global issues par excellence, meaning that in essence, there's no local environmental issues. What we are doing, for example, in one countries in one locations can influence other locations, other people, or even like the whole planet. The forest fires that happening in Indonesia is not only influencing Indonesia, but also disturbing the economy of Singapore, Malaysia, for example. When we cut our trees our tropical forests, the climates that being influenced by what we did is not only in the local climates, but also influencing in some of the global climates. When we are doing overfishing in our own shore, this also influence on how the habitats and the life cycle in the oceans in general. So what I mean is environmental issues is indeed an example of a global issues in very core of that. So we talk about how these environmental issues become very important. And please take a look on the Sparks videos. It's give like descriptions of how environmental issues is not only transboundary, but it's also become very important nowadays, not only for the activists, not only for the environmentalists, not only for the NGOs, but also even like for private sectors who mostly assume that they are only care about profit. They are now trying to balance how balance the need of having profit with the need of the people, the need of the planet, and also in terms of economic and social and ecological needs. So please, this is a commercial actually, but I think it's very good to for us to understand how environmental issues become very important issues nowadays. But how these environmental issues starting take or say took our attentions in particularly after 1980s. So one of the keys or the explanation of how actually our activities, economic activities, influence on the biosphere, influence our planet. So starting in some of populations, a lot of research showing that actually how the increase in populations resulted in the increase in the resource consumptions, and later on because of that we have more carbon footprint, we have waste of pollution. So as you can see from the graph, actually how populations are increasing, people are getting more healthy, getting richer. So it means that although or said people are less having more babies, but they live longer. So it means that we have increase in the total. We have more populations. The planet have more populated than before. So it increased in some of the use of resources, particularly in terms of energy. Also, energy is so integral part of the civilizations. Vaclav Smil, one of the prominent actors and authors in energy sectors, mentioned that energy is the one of the not the only universal currency, meaning that this the energy actually is the one that's being, not money actually, the energy, because everyone needed to make sure that everything being done. So civilization is very tied to the use of energy, and how particularly the use of fossil fuel actually give boost in terms of our economic activities, a lot of development due to this the fossil fuel. Okay. Um, the next, because of that, what we see is we have more waste and pollutions. Okay, let me pause. So as we can see from the graph, United States, Canada, and many other developed countries are the one that use energies, more energy that other countries are using. But a lot of developing countries, particularly the BRICS countries that we discussed, so as they become more developed, they use more resources, they use more energy, and most of these countries are heavily populated, so it means more people are use energy resources nowadays. So this bring pressure to our environments in terms of carbon footprint, waste, and pollutions. So and then this is one of the result of those increasing research in terms of impact to environments. So we come up with the idea, what we call it, sustainable development. It's kind of the alternative paradigm, meaning that because we know that development is important part of our life or our civilizations, about the in terms of the country, the prosperity. So basically, we cannot have zero development, meaning that zero development, we stop a lot of activities. And but at the same time, we know that if there is no limit to our development, so it will bring damage, what's it, the disaster to our civilization. So we try to balance in terms of the need of development, but also the need to conserve our planet. So this is the ideas, meaning that the standard development paradigm holds that the future generation have an equal right to use our planet natural resources. So meaning that, okay, so we understand that everyone need to become richer, wealthier, become what's it, healthier. So that's why we use the resources. But we also understand that if we use those resources without limitations, so the next generations will not have anything left to use, and they only get the pollutions, the waste from our generation. So how we create the in one way, intergeneration equality, intergeneration equity. What I mean is the future generation and the current generation, but also sustainable developments affirms the need for greater equity among and within nations. So it's on the current generations, but between the people, between the rich countries and developed countries and poor countries, and also within the nations, for the rich society, rich people, and the poor population. So how this sustainable development came into being. So this is a long process that can put some of the what's it, momentous years that in terms of environmental. So Rachel Carson started by publications, her books in Silent Springs, underlining the damage of the use of DDT or pesticides in some in farming, in agricultures. That's the DDT or pesticides not only kill the pests and not kill those bugs that disturbing the plants, but also killing other insects that important for the ecology, our ecology. So this is very huge criticism in some of the focus on the economy, and without understanding the impact of the environments. And later on in the US, there's growing groups that are promoting more regulations to protect the environments. And then it's become international movement, creating organization, United Nations on Environmental Protections, and we have the other studies, and basically this several reports, several discussions, several meetings that come up with the idea of how become sustainable development. Nowadays, more commons we talk about what kind of developments that consistent with our values. We call it the green economy, meaning that we want to improve our well-being, human well-being, but also at the same time we have social equity, but also reducing environmental risk. So this is our global aims or goals that we want to achieve collectively. But also environmental change has become one of the pressing in terms of security issues, because of not in terms of countries was it creating war between other countries, not yet, at least in terms of they fighting over like resources, about the water. Yeah, there's some conflict, but not necessarily that's the main factors. But a lot of countries understand that how environmental change is influencing about their securities, how the drought push people to migrate to certain countries. So you have more immigrations, and that immigration put pressure, conflict within the state, the countries, and from that creating like a conflict, local conflict. And so this is how environmental issues can become security issues. Of course, I personally not seeing yet for now that environmental issues create war or conflict between nations, but indeed within the nation there's a conflict between society or group because of resources, environmental change, and maybe in the futures it become greater and become pressure for state fighting over resources and protecting environments. But for now, just we can say that environmental change is become a challenge of how countries thinking about in terms of security issues. And another thing is important in terms of environmental issues is the precautionary principles. So what I mean is precautionary principles is for us as an individual is something is common. So we don't want to take a risk that or it can harm our or it physical being, our security, our safety. But the precautionary principle is a very recent approach in many of policy, environmental policy, meaning that if there is a risk on environments or peoples, the preferable policy is to not doing that initiative of activities, just like what we are experiencing right now in terms of the coronavirus. Precautionary principle is okay, if you know that if you are going out from your house, there's maybe 20%, 30%, 50% chance to get exposed with the virus, or you will spread the virus. So it's better not to go outside, or you stay at home. So the precautionary principle is if you try to build something, development, or there's ideas of make a road or dam or something, but of the analysis, there's environmental risk on that. The policy is tend to not doing that have even like very small environmental risk on that. So it's become very common in many, very influencing factors in a lot of international policy. So that's part of the impact of environmental issues. Okay, so now we talk about why environmental. Okay, everyone understands that environmental is global issues, is international issue, but why it's become very power related. What the meaning is why is politics? What is the relations about politics, international relations of political economy in this case? So first, just like we mentioned, because environmental issues is transboundary. So and this additional here is transboundary externalities, meaning that the result of problems environmental is transboundary. So you cannot stop the impact of environmental problems because of we have national border on that. The environmental problems doesn't recognize any national borders. And then because of this is the transborder problems, you need to have multi-actors to solve that. So Indonesia cannot solve the problem with the forest fire by itself. They need to work together, maybe in terms of expertise, need the support or financial support, need maybe other cooperations to make sure that Indonesia can keep its forest. This is one of the examples, and many other examples of environmental issues. Because if transboundary, you need to have more actors, multi-actors to solve the problems. And then the second is why it's become very political, is because it's transboundary, is is transnational, is a global issues, but because we know that the main actors in international relations is states. So, and every states have their own preferences, meaning that, okay, some countries probably their preference is to reduce industrialization, protecting more environments, to have more protecting the ozone, while developing countries, okay, we want to have more jobs, we want to have more economic development. So while the issue is whether you want to use the forest as resources or you want to keep the forest intact without any human interference on this the forest. So countries have different preference, while the solution should be done collectively. And this is related to what we call, as international relations students, we understand veto power. But in this case, it's not about security councils. It's because of a lot of environmental issues need solutions that are binding to all the actors. So you cannot have 5 countries, for example, in the regions that try to solve pollutions. Okay, we only agree with 4, others is not agree, and then we can continue. No, you need to have all 5 countries to agree on the solutions. And if one countries veto the solutions and doesn't want to cooperate, so it will make the solutions not effective to solve the problems. Let's say Indonesia forest fire against. So Indonesia said, okay, I don't want to cooperate. I want to do it by myself. So even what Singapore doing, Malaysia doing is not very effective because the problems need to have Indonesia in the solutions. And the last is because environmental politics is very related to the trade dynamics. So how you create development, how you, so you want to protect environments. So at the same time, it will influence in terms of how, in terms of the trade activities that you are doing, whether you want to increase focusing on trade or you want to protect the environments. Just like what we are doing right now, there's a discussion about lockdown, pembatasan wilayah also, and so all are, we want to save the people, protect the people from the virus, but also at the same time, because it influences the economy of the society, of the people. So there's always 2 aspects of these issues and environmental issues. And next is, just want to show you that how NGOs, IGOs are very active in this environmental issues. Okay, so you can see from the years, this is kind of the milestone on the environmental agreements. But what I want to underline, I want you to underline this aspect is how environmental issues is showing the huge role of NGOs and IGOs. So this is not state that actually in the forefront of protecting environments, but NGOs and IGOs, although to make it very effective, the solution, the agreement become effective and doable. At the end, you need to have the agreement among the states, but NGOs and IGOs is very influential in the role of environmental issues. And if you go through more detail on how NGOs, IGOs influence the state, what kind of power that they have to influence the state, yeah, environmental issues is the best for you to deal to study in depth on how the role of NGOs and IGOs in international relations. Okay, and the last, okay, so yeah, one of the things, the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, so it's not protections. Okay, so, and one of the regime is okay, so for now, just let's say this is kind of the same of kind of international arrangements, rules, or institutions that deal with environmental politics. So please have a look on the UNFCCs. And okay, so from UNFCCs you can see there are a lot of protocol, Paris agreements, conventions, adaptation and mitigation, all are the issues that being discussed or talked about in terms of environmental protections. So let me just stop here. Just want to introduce to you all in terms of how environmental issues is very important in terms of international relations, IPE, because of it is transboundary and it is, what's it, multi-sectors. It means that it's influence in some of the economic sectors, the political sectors, the social sectors, and also ecological sectors. So it means if you want to solve environmental issues or problems, you need to have all those aspects work together. So, okay, so please have a look of some of the movies. Okay, one of the movies that I posted in the eCampus about True Cause is the story about our clothing, how it's produced and how it impacts in terms of environment, also the people, the economy, and how all aspects are interrelated. So thank you very much, and don't forget for your group project. Okay, so good night.